And this man in the Jeep walks up to me, and he says, "What are you doing?" And I told him, I said, "We're here to pick up 200 dogs. We're going to load them up on an airliner, and they're going to California to find new homes." And he started to cry, and I couldn't believe it. I said, "What is it?" He said, "I was on the helicopter today, and while I was loading somebody in, I turned around, and a dog jumped on the helicopter and was sitting in the back seat." So I was so excited, and I shouted to the pilot up front. I said, "Look at what we've got here." And he said, "Get him off," because that's the way it is in the military. They were not allowed to evacuate animals. He said, "I had to throw the dog into the water." And he was devastated. And I realized, it's not just me. America cares about its animals, but somehow we need to go back and remember that this is a gift from God. They have no voice, and we are responsible for them. And every day that you help an animal, you really sleep better at night. Anyway, so that was the journey, how this all started. We got 800 dogs and cats evacuated to California. If you could have seen the aircraft full of those dogs, it was unbelievable. The little guys were all, in the cabin, and they were just sitting there. They actually were so traumatized that there was not one fight. And in the belly, we had to put the big dogs because, they couldn't get up on the seats there. We could get more little dogs up there. And it was the volunteers. There was nobody formal then. There was nobody from government. It was just people that got in their cars, a trainer from California, a decorator from North Carolina, and they all drove in there, and everybody pitched in. Anyway, it was probably a life-changing experience for me because I realized that I just don't want to give money anymore. I need to be involved. I need to see what happens. And it's a way of cleansing yourself. When you actually get in and you do the work yourself, you just feel so much better. And for me, I saw that first plane take off. I cried. It was like Noah's Ark. And I knew that if I had come from Louisiana and I had left my dog behind, I would have prayed that my dog was on that plane. So everybody had a dream that maybe their dog was saved and would end up in California. I remember the look on the man's face. They had the helicopter was there, and his family had left him, and he had spent 2 weeks on the roof with his dog because he would not leave the dog behind, and he got ill. And so they were telling him, "You've got to get in a helicopter, and you have to leave your dog behind." If you saw the look on the dog's face as they saw them airlift his owner, I cried. I just couldn't stand it. But the good part to that is, we ended up with the dog. He was on one of our flights to California, and because of the volunteers, they get his number on his phone number, but it didn't exist anymore. But the volunteers were able to cross-net across the country, and they finally found a cousin who had, that was his cousin that was in Louisiana with the same name with the dog, and they were reunited. So that was a happy, happy ending. There were so many of them. But like I said, that changed my life. And because of that, a woman came up to me and said, "We need your help. Can you help us with horse slaughter?" I said, "Horse slaughter? What are you talking about?" I've been in racing for so many years, and I never once heard of horse slaughter. If a horse was hurt and they took it away, I would say, "Where's the horse going?" And they would say, "To the glue factory," and everybody would laugh. I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. There was horse slaughter. And in 1998, California had a referendum to end horse slaughter. The slaughterhouses here in California, that took leadership. In those days, we slaughtered 300,000 horses a year. When they changed that in California, it went down to 90,000. Now, the story is when you slaughter horses because they're old and they're unwanted, and it's the kindest thing to do. And you just can't have them laying around on the streets. There wasn't one horse laying around on the street. Okay, they were absorbed. What we found out was 35% of the horses that were slaughtered were stolen. Anyway, that story goes on. My husband came to Washington. He testified. We got it through the House and couldn't get it to the floor of the Senate. It's sad. Our politics really need to, we have to change them somehow, and I don't know. But the one thing that we can do is what all of you do in this room, and that's, I feel so good because I'm with people here who help other people. And as long as we just continue to help and work together, we will get America back together again. Anyway, it led me to a journey of Mustangs, and I couldn't believe it when I went on the internet and I started to see wild horses, and I said they do exist. But they were being slaughtered, they were being rounded up. The government has in holding pens 45,000 wild horses that they are paying for. You, every one of you at this table is paying for these horses. They're at the taxpayer's expense. They have 11 to 15,000 in short-term holding, which means they're in corrals, butt to butt. And they're there for years. They cost you over $2,000 a horse per year. They have another 20 to 30,000 in long-term holding that they ship all the way to Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas. And they pay another rancher to look after them. Well, I would cry at night, and I couldn't stand the thought of a lot of these horses going to slaughter. I'd see the freedom when they're running. I saw the video. And I said, how could it be that a helicopter comes and rounds them up and they get taken off in a truck either to slaughter or to holding pens? And, you know, it reminded me of other countries. I'd come to a civilized country. Why were we doing this? There's a better option. And I would cry. And I prayed. And I remember I was praying. And the thing I always say is when I pray, God help me to use my brain. You can't help me with everything because there's too many people in the world you have to help. But help me learn to use my brain to come up with a solution. And I woke up in the morning and I had a solution. Then I went to Washington. I met with the Bureau of Land Management. I gave them my plan and they agreed. They even announced it to the public. And I about died because I hadn't bought the land yet. And so here I am, Boone's wife, this instant billionaire. Just because you get married, it doesn't mean you're an instant billionaire. But, you know, it gave me a lot of power in Washington. So I grabbed the power, ran with it. But you know what? It's 4 years later, and I'm still working on the project because there's so much red tape. There's so much hate from the cattlemen and the ranchers up in Nevada towards these horses. I don't understand it. The only thing I can tell you is like religion. People get fanatical, like the Taliban, you know. They just hate something, and they don't see any compromise. And God made a world that is big enough and beautiful enough that we can all share in, and we can negotiate ourselves through any issues. I'm very confident about that. I'm going to show you a little video. I purchased this land in Nevada. What it is I went to the government and I said, if I buy this land and I do the same thing as a rancher, I own the deeded land and I buy all of the grazing rights to the public lands around me, would you convert that from cattle grazing to horse grazing? And they all said yes. Meanwhile, we're doing 4 years of politics trying to get this accomplished. But here's my land. I rescued the Paiute horses. This was about 550 horses that came from the Paiute Nation. And this is on sovereign land, and so they have the right to send their horses to slaughter. They are not protected. I bought these horses off of the slaughter trucks, and they ended up at my ranch. And please note there's little babies there too, and you just wonder, what could you eat on a baby? You know, taking a mare in foal and a baby and eat it. It doesn't make sense to me in a foreign country. Anyway, I know it's hard for you to see. I'll just push back here. But this is the release of the Paiutes.